Very rarely does a wrestler win the fans over on their first performance on a big stage. Even more rare is a relatively unknown wrestler going toe-to-toe with a top guy in that wrestling promotion. Such is the story of pro skater turned professional wrestler Darby Allin. Darby Allin's meteoric rise in AEW has seen him become one of the most popular guys on the roster. I think it's fair to call Darby a homegrown AEW talent. Yeah, he wrestled on the indies, but AEW gave him the platform that allowed him to become a star. The fact that he's able to main event shows against the likes of Jon Moxley and Chris Jericho and make it feel like he actually belongs in the ring with those guys shows how good AEW has done with Darby Allin. The amount of faith that AEW showed in Darby though goes all the way back to his very first match with the promotion. It's obvious from day one that Tony Khan and company had big plans for Darby, but could they have predicted just how popular he would get? This is Tranquilo Club, and this is a look back at the night AEW made Darby Allin a star. Unless you were fully immersed in the world of indie wrestling, then you probably didn't hear about Darby Allin until AEW. Before his debut on a big stage, Darby became a regular and made a name for himself in Evolve Wrestling and World Wrestling Network. Living out of his car throughout most of his run on the independent circuit, Allin himself would say that independent promoters would book him on shows to take all these death-defying bumps, as he had gained a reputation for being a daredevil-like wrestler. In late 2018 though, he got his first booking with PWG. In the indie wrestling world, if you're booked with PWG, that basically means you've made it. This is where all the major promotions come to scout talent, including WWE. It wouldn't take long for Allin's stock to rise after his debut with PWG. Him being picked up by a major promotion was inevitable, and it didn't take long. Darby would announce that he'd be leaving Evolve Wrestling over WrestleMania weekend in April 2019. Only a few days later, it would be announced via an episode of Road to AEW Double or Nothing that Darby Allin had signed with AEW. This was a huge get for the promotion because Darby Allin at that point was basically the unofficial face of Evolve Wrestling. He was one of the last big names to not be swooped up by WWE when they were signing a bunch of guys from Evolve like Matt Riddle and Keith Lee. Darby would later reveal that prior to signing with AEW, he had offers from WWE, but he ultimately chose to go to AEW because he said he's not someone to just sit on the sidelines and be happy to be working at WWE. Darby would also add that he didn't want to be stuck in the performance center for years without seeing TV time, and if he did see TV time, that he would most likely end up on 205 Live. So instead, he bet on himself and signed with AEW after agreeing with their vision for what they want pro wrestling to be. And like I said, AEW knew exactly what they were getting with Darby Allin, so they wasted no time integrating him into their plans. It would be announced that Darby Allin would make his AEW debut at Fyter Fest, and he would be going one-on-one with Cody Rhodes. Clearly the higher-ups in AEW saw something in Darby to have his first match with the promotion be against one of the biggest names in the whole company. And this match would be taking place after Cody's critically acclaimed match against Dustin at Double or Nothing. So he's coming in white fucking hot. And the crazy thing is, Cody is the one that brought Darby Allin to AEW. Darby revealed in an interview that Cody was there when he wrestled Pentagon Jr. at a Northeast wrestling show. Darby said this is the match where Cody realized that he's more than just a death-defying spot monkey, that he's actually damn good in the ring and has untapped potential. So the fact that his first AEW match would be against the guy that recruited him was kind of poetic in a way, but still, at the end of the day, AEW's goal here was to introduce their fan base to Darby Allin. So prior to the match, they put together this unbelievable video package explaining who Darby Allin is and what he's all about. In this video package, Darby gives a chilling promo explaining why he paints his face the way he does. He tells a story about being 5 years old and being in the car with his uncle, who had been drinking all day and proceeded to get into a car accident. His uncle ended up passing away, and Darby obviously survived, but he says he felt like half of him died that day, and for that reason, he paints half his face the way he does. Darby also touches on his history with skateboarding and how it gave him this relentless and reckless drive. He says it's all he's known his whole life, and that he doesn't know how to tone it down. He doesn't have an off switch. And because of this, his biggest goal in AEW is to just be accepted as he is. Meanwhile, Cody is using this match with Darby Allin as sort of a warm-up because 2 weeks after this, he's gonna team up with his brother to take on the Young Bucks. Rhodes is very complimentary of Darby though. He says he's very representative of what they want AEW to be, fresh and different. But still, Cody says he's very calm and very confident. He says he's not too worried about facing Darby Allin. Fellow member of the Nightmare family, QT Marshall, on the other hand, warns Cody that while it's okay to be confident, he should be wary of Darby Allin because he has nothing to lose. And he's right, Darby's the underdog in this match, and he's going up against one of the biggest names in AEW. No one expects him to win, but a debut match of this caliber is once in a lifetime. Darby Allin knew that this was his one opportunity to introduce himself to the world. Darby Allin would make his entrance at Fyter Fest carrying a body bag that had Cody's name on it with the numbers 1-1 next to the name. The numbers was a message from Darby to Cody. It meant that after tonight, Cody's record in AEW would be 1 win and 1 loss. Cody would make his entrance to a huge ovation from the crowd. Man, he's beloved at this point because he's the face of AEW. So the match starts and the crowd is firmly behind Cody. There's a dueling chant towards the start of the match, and a small percentage of the crowd is chanting for Darby, but for the most part, this crowd is going for Cody. There is an interesting dynamic to this match because it's established pretty early on that Cody is playing the heel. And if you remember Cody's run in New Japan, you know he plays the part of heel masterfully. So basically, in short, what this match is Darby Allin getting his ass kicked for 20 minutes and refusing to give up. But man, I love this match because the way they build up to the end is just incredible. The match starts off real slow, real old school. Cody controls the pace of the match pretty early on until Darby catches him off guard and gets a few moves in, and that's when Cody's like, okay, I've been giving him too much respect, and that's when he starts dominating completely. Darby's taking a complete beating, and Cody's just trying to beat him in any way that he can, whether it's pinfall, submission, or even count out. There's a pretty nasty bump early on where Cody throws Darby into the turnbuckle, and Darby just completely goes through the turnbuckle, and it just looks fucking brutal. And while Darby is dying outside of the ring on the floor, Cody's inside of the ring showboating, doing push-ups, just good heel stuff. But throughout the match, as Darby refuses to be put away, Cody grows more frustrated. And it's during a moment of frustration where Cody lets his guard down and Darby capitalizes by desperately attacking Cody's hand. This ends up coming in handy later in the match when Cody goes for a suplex on Darby and Darby attacks Cody's hand and he's able to get out of it, and this is where his brief comeback starts. He hits Cody with everything. He puts him in a submission hold, he does a dive to the outside, and just as it looks like Darby's about to turn it around, Cody shuts down all his offense immediately. But after Cody gains the upper hand again on the outside of the ring, the two of them go back into the ring and they have this really cool back and forth with a flurry of moves. After this exchange, Justin Roberts announces that there's only 5 minutes left in this match because yes, there are time limits in AEW. So upon hearing this, the wrestlers start to go all out. Cody hits Darby with an inverted suplex off the turnbuckle. After that isn't enough, Darby rolls out to the apron. Cody tries to go after him, but Darby manages to knock Cody, and Cody just falls on the apron. And this is where we get the bump heard around the world. When Darby sees that Cody falls on the apron, he goes for the top rope. He takes one look behind his back, and then he goes for the coffin drop. But Cody moves out of the way, and what we end up getting is one of the gnarliest bumps you'll ever see, as Darby lands full speed right on his back on the apron. This gets a crazy reaction out of the crowd, and now they're fully behind Darby. Cody gets Darby back into the ring, and it's announced that there's 2 minutes left in this match. At this point, Cody's desperate to win the match, so he puts Darby in the body bag that Darby himself had brought out during his entrance. Cody then hits Darby with a disaster kick while he's in the body bag, and that's still not enough as he kicks out. But after Darby kicks out, he gets on his feet despite all the punishment he's taken, and the crowd is going crazy crazy for him. They're now all chanting for him when earlier in the match, everybody was cheering for Cody. We're down to 1 minute remaining in the match and Cody has had it. He takes off his weight belt and he starts whipping Darby with it. We're now down to just 30 seconds left in the match and Cody is going for the win. He sets up for the crossroads, but Darby counters with the over-the-top stunner. Darby fires up, but before he can do anything else, Cody hits him with a crossroads from behind. We're down to 10 seconds here and Cody is slow to make the pin. When he finally gets to Darby, it's too late. He pins Darby just 1 second too late as the match reaches its 20-minute time limit on the referee's 2 count. The match ends in a time limit draw. A debuting Darby Allin went toe-to-toe with the face of AEW, Cody Rhodes, took a beating for 20 minutes straight and would not give up. In a match where in the beginning everyone was rooting for Cody, by the end of the match they were chanting one name, and it was Darby Allin. A star-making performance on a big stage against a big name for a brand new white-hot wrestling promotion. Darby Allin introduced himself to the wrestling world in a way that only he could. He won the fans over with his unique persona and unorthodox wrestling style. It took him one night to prove he was an elite performer. The title of this video is The Night AEW Made Darby Allin a Star, and while that's true, AEW just provided the platform, and Darby Allin is the one that delivered, and that's what wrestling should be, a trust between the promotion and the wrestler. Because AEW and all the higher-ups there had so much faith in Darby Allin, they gave him this opportunity to show the world what he's capable of, and he over-delivered. Darby quite literally became an overnight sensation in the wrestling world after Fyter Fest. For whatever reason, people really like his personality and his in-ring work, especially the younger generation. You see kids now with his face paint at AEW shows all the time now. Hey, and I'm one of those people. This guy's vibe is just different. In an already stacked roster, he's managed to find a way to stand out. His black and white aesthetic really catches your attention, and he records these videos on his own time and he sends them to AEW for them to air during Dynamite. This guy is a creative genius and he has a fucking banger of a theme song too. And not to mention, he skates to the ring. Like, what the fuck, this guy's different. He catches your attention. AEW has done so well with Darby that he's now become a major player for them in just under a year. He's having matches with Jericho, Moxley, Pac, and it's all believable because his booking in AEW has been great. Darby Allin has been very open about not ever wanting to go to WWE, so it's safe to say that he'll be a force to reckon with in AEW for years to come. From wrestling on the indies to regularly wrestling on national TV, Darby Allin is the perfect example of AEW letting indie wrestlers become stars by just letting them be themselves.